Till we have eyes. Teaching is a difficult task. I learned this recently as I attempted to confidently lead a brigade of young bambinos through the sciences and subtleties of art. I struggled to pass on to my young pupils the ability to see things truly and to accurately portray with lines and shading the things they see. Along the way, I learned the difficulties that often go along with teaching. Teaching takes time, patience, the ability to explain, and good tools. Good tools can be lifesavers to a teacher. Good tools may, in their own right, be teachers. They may be the keys that undo a particular lock in a student's mind and help him or her to understand things in a new light. They may lead a student to see old places in a new light or new places in an old light. A tool that I have found particularly useful is called a viewfinder. True to its name, it finds views. My students, as is often the case when one tries something for the first time, often had difficulties in figuring out how to understand a three-dimensional object in 2 dimensions. They have difficulties in looking at something and drawing that something as it is, and not according to the dictates of what Betty Edwards calls a symbol system in her book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. A symbol system, broadly speaking, is a preconceived notion of something, a kind of prejudice which blinds us to the reality in front of us. One that is specific to art, and the one Betty Edwards writes about, is a method of drawing in which someone uses roughly representative shapes to suggest something, such as a triangle on top of this. I'll just wait. Such as a triangle on top of a square to represent a house. These symbol systems are developed as we develop and grow up. We are taught as young children that this means house. We are also taught that a circle with 2 dots and a curvy line inside of it means face. I probably should practice this a bit more. This system is extremely useful to teach children communication skills. It helps them to communicate in a simple but clear manner the world they see around them. It helps them to understand basic shapes. It is, in a way, the grammar of art. But one cannot remain grammar forever. At a certain point, some outgrow the system and move on to their own unique rhetoric, while others remain stuck in the same frustrating place for years. In order to really be able to draw well, that is, to draw things as they truly are, we must break away from these symbol systems and look clearly at the reality in front of us. My own students often had difficulty in breaking free of their symbol systems. For example, when they were asked to draw self-portraits by looking at themselves in a mirror, many drew themselves as a stick figure or a doodle-like smiley face. A more sophisticated symbol system included anime-like eyes, large, square, and with bubble-shaped shine. Many of my students did not rely much on the mirrors I had given them, and chose instead to draw from symbols they had already stored up in their minds. I wanted them to break free of these symbol systems, however, and draw as they saw things truly. To do so, I turned to the good tool that is the viewfinder. A viewfinder is a square or rectangular piece of cardboard with a square or rectangular piece cut out of the middle. In the place of the cutout portion, a sheet of clear plastic is taped. Students may look through viewfinders and draw directly on them with a whiteboard marker exactly what they see. When they do this, they are able to observe the exact lines and shapes of the objects they are drawing, thus coming to more fully realize it, to make it real, as it were. Viewfinders gave them new perspective, eyes to see what they could not or would not see before. While viewfinders are very useful in the art classroom, their reach extends far beyond and takes many forms other than that of cardboard with some plastic taped to it. They can also be people, places, things, actions, thoughts, anything that helps you to see or understand something in a new way, anything that gives you a new perspective in order to see things more clearly and more truly. Today, I'd like to relate to you some stories of viewfinders. The first viewfinder I would like to tell you about is actually 2 viewfinders that came together to make one. This convergence occurred the first time I read Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. The book is a retelling of the Greek myth of Psyche and Cupid, set in the barbaric, polytheistic kingdom of Glome. It's about two sisters, Orwell and Psyche, the first ugly and second beautiful. The whole book is written as if Orwell was writing it, as her case against the gods. She lays out for the reader why the gods have been so injurious to her throughout her entire life, beginning with her childhood and going all the way through her old age. Her largest accusation against the gods has to do with Psyche, her beautiful sister. Orwell knew that Psyche had been given beauty. She had not. Psyche had been given worship that rightfully belonged to a goddess. She had not. Psyche had been given a golden palace. She had not. Psyche had been wedded to a god. She had not. I say all this not to say that Orwell did not love Psyche, for she did. Her love, however, was a selfish love, a kind that consumed Psyche. When Psyche left her and was married to a god and given a golden palace, Orwell lashed out in anger, saying that the gods had no right to take Psyche from her, even if it was to give her this wonderful new life. She became bitter towards the gods for the things she believed they had done to her. In the last few chapters of the book, Orwell brings her case against the gods to the gods in the divine trial. She opens her scroll, on which is written what she believes to be her cool, logical story, and begins to read. She wants to demand an answer as to why the gods have done to her what they have done. She wants answers as to why they have taken Psyche away from her. When she hears herself speak, she hears herself truly for the very first time. She realizes how bitter she has become over the years. She realizes that her love of Psyche was possessive and got in the way of both her life and Psyche's life. When her inner ugliness is revealed, she is able to let the gods into her heart so they can transform her into someone as beautiful, inside and out, as Psyche. The first time I read the novel, my mom had told me it was an incredibly profound book, but that I would have to endure a lot of frustrating reading in order to get to the good part at the end that would make it all worthwhile. I began reading the book, and before much time had passed, I was wondering what the point of reading it was. I didn't understand why C.S. Lewis was creating this pagan world, or how the polytheism in the novel could possibly relate to my life as a Christian. I hated the constant complaining of Orwell. This was my prejudiced symbol system getting in the way. I thought I had to understand the novel completely, from the beginning all the way to the end, even before I had gotten to the end. My symbol system also falsely told me that books set in polytheistic places cannot possibly relate to my life as a Christian. I wanted to get to the happy ending, where everything made sense and I no longer had to guess. The happy ending came. In the last few chapters, C.S. Lewis masterfully turns the whole book on its head with a revelation that is a metaphor both for the lives of the characters and for our lives as simple human beings trying to live a pure and godly lifestyle. I'm not ashamed to tell you that the ending made me cry because it was so profound. But I wouldn't have made it to the end of the book if I had only listened to myself and only seen the book through the tinted lens of my symbol system. My mom was the first viewfinder that helped me to stick with the book long enough to get to the reward at the end. Then came the most important viewfinder of all, the last few chapters of the book itself, in which C.S. Lewis casts the entire book in a whole new light. I came to see Orwell's complaining not as meaningless and pointless as I had thought it to be, but rather as an analogy for our lives, for my life as a simple human being. I came to see the multiple gods written of in the book not as irrelevant and stupid, but as analogies for different aspects of both God's character and man's character. My skewed view, my symbol system of the novel was righted by the viewfinders that were my mother and the end of the book itself. I came to see it all with new eyes, with a new perspective that hits me with its profundity every time I read the book. This was not the only time in my life that multiple people or things converged to make one coherent viewfinder. Such was my experience with the following song, which most or even all of you will recognize. The song is Hallelujah Amen from Handel's Judas Maccabeus, and when mixed ensemble first started practicing it, I was not a fan. I'd never quite been able to enjoy most Baroque music. It seemed forced and contrived to me, which is my own unfortunate prejudice, my symbol system, if you will. The more we sang the song, however, and the closer and closer we got to really singing it well, the more I enjoyed it. I came to realize the beauty of the intertwining parts and how they create layer after layer of incredible complexity. I can hear the parts playing with each other right now. Here come the sopranos soaring above the other parts like birds flitting through the sky. Now the lower parts come in and balance out the song, reminding those birds they also belong to the earth even as they soar above. I love when composers or musicians create complexity with layers, and so when I discovered this particular phenomenon in the song, I was quite the happy little singer. But I didn't come to an appreciation of the song on my own. There were many music teachers who shared their passion with me, who broke down my prejudicial wall, which had kept me from seeing the beauty of the music. These were my viewfinders. In middle school, it was Dr. Dana Spurgeon, my choir and music teacher. She took me on my first journey through music history, on a tour through the different periods of music. At this point, I still didn't have an appreciation for Baroque music, but I was at least exposed to it. My first year at Northfield, Mr. Larry Saylor was my viewfinder. He was intensely passionate about music of many eras and wanted to share that passion with the rest of us. I caught a little of that excitement, which began to weaken the wall that was my prejudice. Both Mrs. Hetheringtons also took sizable bricks out of my wall through their excitement and enthusiasm for all kinds of vocal music throughout the years. And Lauren Polans, the girls' ensemble director and my voice teacher, showed me how thrilling it can be to master your voice and use it to make art. The most influential viewfinder of all, however, was Erin Sundquist. Through her Monday morning convocation lectures over the past 2 years, she has shown all of us such a passion and love for music history that is hard not to catch. I remember watching her talk about the earliest recorded music and seeing the awe and wonder in her face and thinking, she's so passionate about that music that, to me, has been dead for thousands of years. It made me wonder, what am I that passionate about? It also made me think that maybe there's more to this whole old music thing than what I had previously thought. Erin Sundquist was the battering ram, a very quiet and humble battering ram that finally toppled my prejudicial wall and helped me to see how beautiful Handel's song, Alleluia, Amen, really is. Thank you, Erin, and all the others for the new perspective. The final viewfinder I would like to leave you with is not a person. It's not even a place or really even a thing, but a convergence of ideas. And the ideas are these: time and an open mind. Time and an open mind became my viewfinder when I began researching the works of Piet Mondrian, a painter who is most well known for his paintings done entirely in primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, and white and black, with elemental lines and shapes. When I was first exposed to his works, I dismissed them haughtily, thinking, those are too childish and simplistic for me. I could have done that when I was in kindergarten. This, however, was not so true, which I learned more and more as I delved into his work. My symbol system told me that if something was simple, it must be simplistic. My viewfinder in this case was, at first, actually Grace Langness, who led me to spend more time with Mondrian's work. Grace presented one of his paintings in convocation during one of her Monday lectures, and I suddenly found myself defending it. I didn't research his works, but the seed had been planted, and when it came time to pick an artist to focus on for my senior project, the Mondrian seed that had been planted in my mind grew into a sprout. He intrigued me. The more I looked at his works, thought about them, and analyzed them, the more I came to understand them. Understanding them led to appreciating them, and appreciating them led to liking them. I had to keep looking and thinking, however, and not just make a snap decision about the meaning or lack of meaning in his work. I now see Mondrian's work as brilliant in its simplicity and revolutionary in its form. The simplicity of lines, shapes, and colors they use are not out of a childish lack of understanding, but out of an urge to communicate what he called pure relations, using the simplest possible form. As Meyer Shapiro writes in his essay, Mondrian, Order and Randomness in Abstract Painting, Mondrian wanted to find, quote, the universal and absolute in art, the true ground of aesthetic harmony, end quote. Whereas many people overlook the most basic elements of art, Mondrian chose to focus on them and to draw the focus of others to them. His work was revolutionary in the way it changed people's views. If one looks at a good portion of the art and design that came after Mondrian, one can see a clear connection. His use of primary colors, elemental lines, and the simplest possible shapes has influenced artists and designers too numerous to list here. Mondrian has become an image completely unique and symbolic of our culture. In short, Mondrian's work revolutionized the art world. Another way my viewfinder of time and an open mind helped me to come to a better understanding of Mondrian is by helping me to see how he got where he did, which helps me to understand his perspective better. When I began looking at his earlier work, not just at his later, more well-known pieces, it was easier for me to understand what drove him. He seemed to have a lifelong search for essentiality, for the most basic and true forms of things. In this piece, for example, one can already somewhat see his reliance on fundamental shapes and lines. It's still subtle at this point in his career, but the further one progresses in his life, the more one can see this emphasis. This eventually leads to the style that is now perceived as iconic Mondrian. All this knowledge I would not have if I had not persevered in trying to see more clearly and truly this incredible artist. Time and an open mind were the multifarious viewfinder which helped me to overcome my skewed prejudices and come to see Mondrian with a new perspective. Viewfinders are everywhere. They can be cardboard and plastic, or they can be ink and paper. They can be people in your very own lives, or they can be ideas and abstract notions. They are good tools which enable you to see reality more clearly. Many of you have seen the C.S. Lewis quote that hangs on Mrs. Elder's door. In coming to understand anything, we are rejecting the facts as they are for us in favor of the facts as they are. The facts as they are for us are simple systems. The facts as they are what we get when we look at the world through viewfinders. Whatever shape viewfinders take, trust them. Be patient with them. Look through them with new eyes. Learn from them, and you'll soon be seeing the truth more clearly and vividly than ever before.